Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Bros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me are Kyle Yates and Mike Tagliere. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80, at KyleYNFL, and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Boys, how you doing? I feel like we were talking before we started, and the energy was a little low. I'm gonna need something special today.
Hey,
are you guys
Dan,
ready?
Hold on. I save it for the show, dude. I'm not gonna use up all my energy that I have available to me before the show to talk to you two dummies. I am going to save it for our listeners. We're going to talk about the waiver wire. I'm going to get over this stupid sickness, whatever the hell it is that I have, and we're going to power through because you know what? It's fantasy playoffs. We are in week 14, my friend.
This is a big time right now for the waiver wire, and unfortunately, I don't know. I wish, maybe our producer can clip how often we say, this is just not a good waiver wire week at all. But this, Yates, this kind of takes the cake as being an uninspiring group of players to pick up, right?
Last week we said that, and I think this week might have topped it. Yeah, it's not too pretty.
I'm glad we aren't really, maybe I'll ask you about it, but we're not harping on the percentage of your fab budget that you would use to pick up players, because it would basically be negative at this point. Save your money. I don't know, do something. But it doesn't matter. We're gonna win some championships today. That's right. I gotta get the energy level up. I'm ready, Tags. Don't worry.
Dan, did you? What's your problem, man, to Yates yesterday?
I did. What's your problem, man? The issue is, in case you're listening to this and you didn't listen to our Sunday night recap, first, what's wrong with you? Second, Tags was not able to be on it because he is a little under the weather. He is powering through today. But as you know, we have a What's Your Problem, Man segment, and I have my rankings, and I have something set up where I can immediately see the difference between my rest of season rankings and Tags' rest of season rankings. I don't have that with Yates. I was not prepared for it. So
what we did was plot twist. We talked about your rankings, Tags, and we still did What's Your Problem, Man, even without you on the podcast.
Oh no, that's terrible. You guys are terrible.
Here's the thing: there were so many things. Yates just kept falling on the sword. He was like, I know.
It was like a 15-minute segment. I mean.
Yates just kept saying, I know, I'm bad at this. I know, I'm the worst at ranking rest of season players. I don't know what I'm doing. I should not be doing this for a living. But, I mean, kudos to him. He owned it. He owned those terrible rankings. And he's the man. That's why he's the best in the business. All right, we're going to talk about the waiver wire. We will give you advice, despite the fact that this is not the best week. There are a few players who can help you, especially if you have made the playoffs and you are a little thin or you have some injuries, or if you have a bye this week, you're looking a little further down the road. As you know, in addition to this podcast, you should also be checking out our waiver wire assistant. It's over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Identify the top players to add in your league, view the percentage of experts who would add that player to your team, get a detailed analysis of the impact of any pickup on your team. Again, that's at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. You guys know what our plan is for the waiver wire show. We're going to talk about the notable waiver wire pickups by position, starting with running back, then wide receiver, then quarterback, then tight end, then our top 5 overall, Qb and Dst Streamers, and then drop or keep, where we talk about 10 fringe rosterable players. Some minor news before we start. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are being placed on the COVID-19 reserve list. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong. Sounds like DJ Moore actually has tested positive, while Samuel is just a close contact. Is that right?
That's my understanding of it, yeah.
All right, you guys probably
they don't tell you anything. They're trying to be hush-hush about this whole thing, and it's screwing over. And I mean, I don't know if there's actual advantage to this, but they don't tell you who's tested for positive sometimes, and you just have to kind of just play it by day.
Yeah, I thought, and I'm going to look it up right now because that's what we can do. We can do whatever we want. According to Rappaport, he says DJ Moore is positive, and others are close contacts.
Okay. I know that they said Curtis Samuel was a close contact.
Curtis Samuel is a close contact. Yeah, it does say that DJ Moore is positive. Let's go on that. We don't know when they test positive, though, right? Because there were these concerns earlier on in the week, right? They had a bye week, but there were some of these concerns, so we don't know. So it's hard to analyze it, but let's assume that both are out, or if one is out. How, what would that do to you in terms of, you expect Christian McCaffrey to come back this week against the Broncos. I mean, would that bump Robbie Anderson way up? Would it have a limited impact? Tags, what do you think?
Oh, it would certainly bump Anderson up. I mean, I don't it's so difficult to try and start thinking about that, because then you have to go through the Panthers depth chart at wide receiver and kind of see who they're going to put out there. But the Broncos are their matchup in Week 14, and it's a brutal matchup against them. They're a team that, despite all the injuries they've dealt with, Devon Miller to Jarrell Casey to some other players in the front, Mike Purcell, they've lost so many players, and they're still generating pressure. They're still one of the teams that's been really good against wide receivers. I started doing some research for this week's games, and the Broncos are one of 4 teams in the NFL who have held wide receivers to fewer than 7.5 yards per target. So, I mean, Robbie Anderson he'd be locked in to at least 8 targets, which means he's absolutely a locked-in starter as a wide receiver 2 at minimum. So, yes, he would certainly get a bump in the rankings, but it would just, if anything, it's just going to make me move him up slightly, but Teddy Bridgewater becomes a non-factor. I don't think that you should have been talking about streaming him anyway, but it just drags down the whole offense in terms of the scoring opportunities.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't really have an impact on today's show, which is waiver wire, because nobody's available right now that we're thinking of that you want to pick up, but it is something to be aware of, and we will have more word as the week goes on. As I mentioned, Christian McCaffrey is expected to return. The Jets fired defensive coordinator Greg Williams. As we all know, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, and depending on which type of
Do I get points if I know the movie that's from?
What is it, Yates?
Dark Knight.
Wow.
Well, it's because it's within the last 5 years.
It's fair. Well, either way, one of those two things happened, depending on which type of Jets fan you are. Greg Williams kind of did both. So congratulations to Greg Williams. Note, to the extent you were starting the Jets DST, they're going to have a new defensive coordinator against the Seahawks, and we do thank you for still listening, even though you went winless in your fantasy league this year. There is some mild optimism that Daniel Jones is going to return next week against the Cardinals, but we're going to have to wait and see. Doug Peterson has not yet named an Eagles starting quarterback against the Saints, so in case you were wondering, if you didn't want to start anyone on the Eagles next week against the Saints, or you really, really didn't want to start anyone on the Eagles against the Saints next week, you just got to wait a little longer until we figure it all out. Position by position, we're going to start with running back. I'll start with you, Tag, since you weren't on last night. You've had a nice long break. Who's your top running back ad of the week?
I mean, I'm going to say Tony Pollard, and I know it's probably not going to be the popular choice among us, just because, Dan, you're more of there's an injury, there's a shark in the water, I'm going to go to that blood, and I'm going to grab this player because that player is out as far as I'm concerned.
And you know what? That always works, because whenever that happens, you can guarantee that you are going to get that Duke Johnson, and you are going to get that Devontae Booker, and you are going to get 4 half PPR points, and it is going to sink you. But for that moment, when you hear that the starting running back is out, oh man, that's a good day. That's a good day that almost makes losing your league worth it. Anyway, go ahead, Ted.
No, it just comes down to a high-value handcuff right now, which is basically all I'm looking for. I don't think any running backs in the waiver wire are guys that you're going to be able to plug in and play right away. You could talk about the guys like Ty Johnson, who stepped in for Frank Gore, who suffered a concussion. Will Gore be back? He doesn't have a long history of concussions, so I would assume that he's probably going to be back for this game. The matchups against the Seattle Seahawks, which is going to be a negative game script. That's Seattle coming back off that really, really bad loss to the Giants. I expect that team to come back and kind of, get their confidence back in that game against the Jets. They're going to throw the ball all over him. So Ty Johnson should have some value in PPR formats, yes, but is he a guy that you want to start, or you're going to start with any confidence if Frank Gore is actually back in the lineup? Absolutely not. Pollard against Cincinnati. Now, we haven't seen what happens in the game tonight, so that can change, obviously, with Pollard, but as of right now, he's the handcuff to Zeke in that game against the Bengals. They're going to be able to run the ball quite a bit. Tony Pollard has been getting, 6 to 8 carries here and there, so like a dire situation, you could probably throw him in there against the Bengals, who have allowed, I think it's 5 yards per carry on the season. It's just, I'm not excited about these other players there. You guys can talk about your favorite ones, and then I'll kind of give you my rebuttal to them. But I think Ty Johnson is the only one that I would actually consider as a potential guy I would take over Pollard.
Okay, so Pollard, to be clear, Tags mentioned we haven't seen the game. It's tomorrow night. It's hard to keep track because there are 3 games basically going on from the time we record this until waiver wires are going to run, but it is tomorrow night. If anything happens to Zeke, of course, Pollard shoots up and would be the number 1 guy. As of right now, Yates, as we sit here, is Pollard your number 1 running back pickup of the week?
No, I've got him at 3, but I can definitely see the argument. I mean, none of these guys are ones that I'm clamoring to add. So yeah, Pollard, I definitely get the argument as far as him being a high-end handcuff. But again, this offense doesn't exactly look fantastic. So I don't know if we can really say that he is in the same kind of high-end handcuff. I think he's just kind of a handcuff at this point, rather than some of these other guys that we can talk about of an Alexander Madison or, these guys that what happens if this starter above them really does go down.
Well, it is worth noting, by the way, Madison's probably out for a couple of weeks.
Right,
point,
yeah,
right?
that's fair. That's fair. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I was just using that as an example. So,
Yep.
with Pollard, I think you can add him, but he's not someone that I'm really like, yeah, you got to go at him.
Okay, well, I know there's somebody on this week's waiver wire running back list that you are just dying to add. So who is it?
I do have Ty Johnson at number 1, and no, Dan's joking there. I'm really not looking to add Ty Johnson.
No, this is not a good running back waiver wire. Tony Pollard, who hasn't even played yet and is a handcuff, is tags number 1, which I'm not even arguing with strenuously. So it's a terrible week for running backs at the very least. But go ahead. Ty Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, Ty Johnson, because what happens if Frank Gore does miss this next game? And we need to get that clarity. Like Tag said, he doesn't have a long history of this. He might not miss this next game. It all depends on the practice reports and what we hear coming out of the Jets organization. So it's something to continue to monitor. Ty Johnson actually looked pretty good. But again, it's a conversation of was that the Las Vegas Raiders defense or was that actually Ty Johnson and the Jets offense? So, yeah, Ty Johnson, I mean, if he does end up getting this job next week, and Frank Gore does miss, I mean, I'm not having Ty Johnson higher than like running back 28 in my rankings. He's not going to be someone who I'm like, yeah, you got to plug him into your lineup.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is gross. Like, this is not a running back week, unfortunately. Usually running backs are where I like to go. This is one of the few weeks where running back is not my top choice overall. But neither one of you guys has mentioned the guy who is tops on my list. And again, it's very, very close. I don't really care about any of these guys because they're not going to make an impact. But that's Adrian Peterson. Are you just both assuming DeAndre Swift is just back? Like, no questions asked next week? Is that the deal? Because if not, he would be number 1. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, yes, he probably would be number 1. But so DeAndre Swift missed a couple weeks with a concussion, right?
Yes.
And everything was good from there. Like, he returned to practice, everything was good. He missed last week with an illness, so it wasn't the concussion. So yes, I am anticipating him 100% to play this week, therefore being a crappy game script. And that's another thing, even if Peterson were to get the start, and I'm putting that in quotation marks,
right?
This game has a really, really negative game script. I mean, the Packers are going to throw up points at will on that defense, and that did not look any better without Matt Patricia there, by the way. The Bears just gave the game away on defense. But the Packers, I just don't see any way that they're hanging with the Packers in that game. So therefore, Peterson, if they fall behind, it's just such a negative game script that it can be a very, very, very low floor for a guy that's targeted maybe 1 or 2 times a game.
If we knew right now DeAndre Swift were out, and again, we are all expecting him to play next week because of what you said. If we knew he were out, would Peterson be your number 1?
Yeah, he'd go to number 1. I wouldn't be happy about it, but yeah.
And Yates, are you also just assuming that DeAndre Swift plays next week?
I have Peterson at 2. So I have Ty Johnson at 1, AP at 2, and then Tony Pollard at 3. So Adrian Peterson, for the time being, is kind of in this number 2 spot where, we don't have the clarity yet on DeAndre Swift, so AP just kind of lands here. It's due to the matchup. Green Bay, the game script, of course, but you can absolutely run all over the Green Bay Packers. So, he's someone that I think he's worth at least continuing to monitor until we get that clarity that, hey, DeAndre Swift's back next week.
And the one thing I'll say about the game script tags is it's been a pretty negative game script the past 2 weeks, and the dude scored 4 touchdowns and gotten 31 carries. He got
his 2 touchdowns against Houston before the game was out of control.
Okay, well, there'll be a quarter before the game is out of control. When they get down to the goal line, they're not. You're right. They're not afraid. I'm just saying.
Where would you rank him? Or, ballpark it. Where would you rank Adrian Peterson if Swift were out?
I bet you that if Swift were out in this game, I'd rank him as a borderline top 24 option, like 24.
That's right. We're at, 24 was the number I had in mind too.
What about you, Tags?
I was thinking he'd fall somewhere in the 26 to 30 range.
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, running back stinks, man. We do the start-sit shows every Sunday morning, and it feels gross once you get to 18. Gross. If you're gonna give me a guy who, by the way, Peterson does not look terrible. When I watched him, you guys probably watched that game a little closer than I did. I do not think that he looks terrible or, he's barely moving. He makes a couple of moves that, are decent. If he's going to get this workload, if you're going to give him 15-plus carries every week, you're going to give him the ball by the goal line against Green Bay, I'll take that over Ty Johnson, against Seattle for sure, and Tony Pollard. But I think we can all agree, regardless of anything, we're not excited about running backs this week. This, I think, is the worst running back week that we have seen this entire season. Would you guys agree with that?
I would, yeah.
It's looked gross for a lot of weeks. I want to throw up every single time. So
I disagree. You give me a Devontae Booker or Duke Johnson any day of the week, I'm all over that running back. But yeah,
Frank Gore.
I love. By the way, Frank Gore. Let's just talk about that. Okay,
that could have been such a good game.
I mean, the game was not, and I was gonna jump in, Yates, when you said it was like, was that the Jets offense or was it the Raiders? It was the Raiders defense. Okay, that's what the game was from Ty Johnson. So that should have been Gore's game. That would have been Gore's game had he not gone out right away with a concussion. Don't feel bad. You made the right choice. That kind of shows it, but sometimes it doesn't work out, as you know. Okay, so we've got AP, we've got Ty Johnson, we've got Tony Pollard. This is not, we are not going to discuss fab percentages anymore, guys. Are we in agreement with that? It's either, what did we say earlier when we were talking? It's either
something
you bid
or
something or nothing.
Right.
That's where we are. Either these guys are worth it. I would add Peterson because I do think the weird buzz around Swift, guys, has me a little concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You have that AP quote, which may have been taken out of context, and maybe he had an illness, so that's why he didn't have the same energy that he had. But it's just been a very weird week. It's been a very weird time, so I would just add Peterson as the only guy who I think I have the chance of feeling comfortable starting, again, unless something happens to Zeke. Any interest in somebody like Ito Smith, who was kind of the best back in Atlanta, or Alfred Morris, who wound up getting the touchdowns, or anything like that, or absolutely no interest in either guy, Yates?
Absolutely no interest.
Tags, you agree?
I think Ito Smith is someone that, when we talk about handcuff running backs that are, available in 60+% of leagues, Ito Smith has clearly distanced himself from Brian Hill as the handcuff to Todd Gurley, who, by the way, just missed a game last week with an injury. So knowing this team is going nowhere, if Todd Gurley suffers any sort of injury, they're probably just going to shut him down for the year. And therefore, you get a running back that's attached to a decent offense. So Ito Smith I have as my number 4 running back this week. I'm not crazy high on him or anything like that, but I do think he's worth an add if you have a spot on your bench that, again, this is the point of the year where, we want to be clear and say, stop holding on to guys, that are going to get you a floor. We're done with bye weeks. They're right. A thing of the past right now. I don't really want to hold on to J.D. McKissick anymore if I don't have to. You know what I mean? I would rather hold on to guys where there should not be a guy, by the way. We should never, for the rest of this year, have a show where we talk about a running back that we are excited about on the waiver wire, because everybody that would be exciting that would be on the waiver wire would require an injury. What we have to do right now is say, look at the running backs there and say, if one of them went down, who is their backup, and would I be excited to play that player over any of the guys in my starting lineup? And if the answer is no, do not grab them. If the answer is yes, then be like, well, yeah. Like if Melvin Gordon got hurt, Phillip Lindsay would be an auto start for most teams. So that's a guy that should be owned in all leagues. Jamal Williams, those guys, some people drop those guys in leagues. Like Leonard Fournette would actually fall into that category, because if Ronald Jones were to go down with an injury, I think we'd see a lot more of Leonard Fournette. That's the type of guys right now. Like Mike Davis is probably going to be dropped because Christian McCaffrey's coming back.
Right. Those are the guys. You're saying don't do that.
No, do not.
Okay. So I want to get your thoughts on this, actually, because, and again, we talked a little bit before we started. This is not a great waiver wire week. We're going to get into all the pickups, but it is worth talking about the strategy that you employ. Ordinarily, Tags, I completely agree with you. This is when you want to roster the high-end handcuffs, and you should, to be clear. But this year, to me, guys, feels a little bit more like it's okay to have a little bit more unexciting depth. And again, last week, week 13, do or die, we were recommending, and it would have been correct without the injury, Frank Gore. Frank Gore does not fall into the high-end handcuff, but he did wind up getting, a shot because Parriman was out and because he looked like he could do it. Because of COVID this year, guys, and because of the fact that people are being added, I think sometimes just having depth might be a little bit more of the way to go than it would be ordinarily, because you're getting so many of these players. Like, you can't foresee that DJ Moore or Curtis Samuel may not play this week. They're wide receivers, but it happens sometimes with backs where it's not the high-end handcuff necessarily, but just having depth might be something that you go to. Yates, how do you view this in terms of how you're constructing a roster if you're in the playoffs at this point?
Yeah, it depends on what that cutoff is, right? Like, what do we determine that the cutoff is for these guys? Like Frank Gore, I completely agree with you, Dan. I think he would be someone that type of back would be someone that I would still hold on to, because I know that I can at least plug him into my lineup and I know that I'm going to get a safe floor, versus where, like, if I have Todd Gurley and I'm going to pick up Ito Smith, like, I think it's going to be a committee approach. If Todd Gurley, something were to happen to Todd Gurley, he's not this clear, defined handcuff. So it's kind of difficult to, like, fully explain. But I think we just have to determine what that cutoff is. Like, is that RB30? Is that something like that we say, okay, this is the range where, okay, I'm still going to hold on to these guys and not drop them to the waiver wire, even though they don't bring much upside, but because they do provide that depth. I don't know if that made much sense, but I think we got to just kind of figure out what that threshold is.
Right, and I think that that's fair, and I think it always depends on what your team construction looks like. Like, let's say for me, I roster, let's say James Conner before this the COVID thing or anything. Let's say James Conner is playing, and I don't roster Benny Snell for whatever reason. Okay, I didn't roster him. In that sense, like, is my best bet to roster a Tony Pollard or something to hope for that, or is it good to have a Frank Gore-ish type player on your team who can step in if there's something like that? You understand what I'm saying with that one, Tags? Like, I feel like this year it's a little different than last year.
Oh, I definitely do. And that's why Frank Gore was someone that I recommended adding last week, because you do need those guys in case something COVID pops up where, right now, let's say that I had people asking me about trades before the trade deadline quite a bit. And I was like, I think this year more than ever, I don't know if I'm willing to trade away all my depth going into the playoffs, just because you might need something like that. So if you have just like, let's say that you have three running backs in your team that you're starting 2 in your running back slot, 1 in your flex spot, and then everybody else in your team is straight up handcuffs, you might want to sacrifice one of those guys just in order to grab a running back that you can plug and play in case there is a COVID situation where one of your players just pops up missing. Otherwise, you're basically left dead in the water.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's that, we are always saying own or roster the high-end handcuffs, but you do want to leave yourself a little flexibility in that, because of COVID, this year is a year like no other, where, again, consolidating to strengthen your starting lineup, that might not be the championship winning formula. It might be just who can weather the storm of what's coming, because, again, we're seeing more and more players placed on the COVID-19 reserve list without even us realizing that it was going to happen.
Right. Really quick, can I chime in too? I think more of the conversation with this is the wide receiver depth that you have, and holding on to someone like a Jalen Reagor, or if you still have Travis Fulgham on your roster, if you have like a Sterling Shepard, and it's a little bit different if Daniel Jones is back at quarterback, but like those types of players that offer very, very little upside at this point, that you're not going to, even if your starting wide receivers above go down, you're not going to feel super comfortable plugging in those guys in the fantasy playoffs. That would be the situation where I would drop Jalen Reagor from my roster at this point, and I would pick up Tony Pollard. Like, that's more of the conversation, I think, rather than trying to figure out what running back I would drop and roster, right? I think it's more so I want the running back depth and the home run hit rather than someone who I know no matter what happens in that offense, it's not going to change.
Tags, he basically just said to drop Sterling Shepard. What do you think about that?
I think it's the same thing with wide receivers, isn't it?
No, but this is what I'm saying.
No,
Sterling Shepard is your boy.
Correct. No, and that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, isn't it the same thing that you were talking about with running backs, where you're going to need someone to plug into your lineup? I know wide receivers are a little bit easier to find, a guy that might see 5 or 6 targets, but a guy that's locked into 6+ targets, I wouldn't drop Sterling Shepard.
Yeah. I mean, I was just trying to get you fired up.
Yeah, that was all he was trying to do.
That's your guy. Like, I was not trying to get on a long sort of like, let's debate. I was just like, this is your guy. This is the guy who you've had at like the top of your waiver wire list every time he's available. And someone was just saying to drop him. I was trying to get you to fight, but you didn't.
I'm not looking to fight today. I'm looking to save my energy this week.
This is the worst. I thought you had saved your energy for this podcast, and you have failed.
I'm already running low, man.
You know what? All right. We've been here for 5 minutes. All right, Tags is done. Thank you for coming into the Fantasy Bros Football Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the first 10 minutes where Tags had anything to offer you. Okay, let's go to wide receiver, guys, where at least I think it's a little more exciting than running back at this point. Not crazy exciting, but a little more exciting. I'm going to start with you, Yates. Who's your number 1 waiver wire pickup for wide receiver?
Yeah, we've been talking about him a lot this season, and he's still only 18.3% rostered. It's Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick, 2 touchdowns last night, and I think that we can look at the offense and we can say Drew Lock's not the long-term answer in Denver. We can analyze whatever. Tim Patrick just continues to produce. I don't know what more this dude has to do to get onto fantasy football rosters. He is now he's been a weekly flex play that offers, ridiculous upside. So I think, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I didn't know if you were done because you
I was taking a breath.
My bad. Don't take a breath. Keep going.
With Tim Patrick, I think that you can rely on him in the fantasy playoffs as a solid, flex play and that comes with that upside. Yeah, investing in the Denver Broncos passing attack doesn't feel great, but yeah, at the same time, he just continues to produce.
All right, two things. So I think it was the waiver wire live stream we did several weeks ago, and she's tweeted about it. Samantha Pravidi, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I apologize. That we talked about how if Tim Patrick had like a cooler name, he would be just completely widely rostered. Just like, oh, it's Tim Patrick. That's like sounds like my cousin. Like it just doesn't. It's not an exciting name, and people
Tim
kind of
Patrick,
gloss over.
CPA.
Yeah, Tim Patrick. Thank you. We do your accounting and your legal work. Come on by. But I think, Tags, the bigger thing is, Tags, you are, if there's not one thing, but one of the many things that I feel like you preach is you don't like attaching yourself to poor offenses. We brought up Tim Patrick a ton this year. You have really kind of always been like, not really want to go there. How are you feeling now after his 2-touchdown game last night?
I've actually come around on him a little bit. When I was writing up last week's games, I said that him and Jerry Jeudy belong basically right next to each other in rankings. That Jerry Jeudy has started to lose some efficiency. Drew Lock has been getting worse and worse, and it was a tough matchup against Kansas City. So to see him walk away with 2 touchdowns is impressive. He does have 3 100-yard games this year, and they've all come over his last 8 or 9 games, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. In one of those games, he had to leave early because he got kicked out. I already started looking at his matchup this week against Carolina, and Dante Jackson has been missing some time the last couple weeks. I'm guessing out of the bye he'd probably return, but if he were to miss another week, Patrick would primarily see Troy Pride in coverage, who has been just straight up dominated. So Tim Patrick could have another good matchup. The Panthers don't have a whole lot of pass rush. I think they're generating a sack on just like 2.7% of dropbacks, which is like one of the lowest marks in the league. So I do think Tim Patrick is a decent pickup, but looking at the rest of the schedule, I didn't put him that high just because, again, Carolina hasn't been a great matchup for wide receivers. I think it can be if they're missing Dante Jackson. Buffalo the week after that, tough matchup, and then the Chargers in week 16. So attaching yourself to someone like Drew Lock in those tough matchups, it just makes me a little queasy is all.
I was looking at Patrick because you guys know, he's been one of, we have a bunch of Dan Harris guys that we joke about who I've been like, I love this guy. Patrick has kind of been one for most of it. You look at his consistency this season. So, okay, we're going to throw out the game where Hinton started, right? That doesn't count.
Yeah.
We're not holding that against any Broncos pass catcher. And Tags, you mentioned it. He got thrown out of the game. I believe it was against the Raiders. I think that was the game, right?
Raiders or Miami. I can't remember which one.
I thought it was the Raiders because he had a huge game against Miami. So I think it was where he had 6. So you throw out those 2 games, okay? Because he got thrown out early. His last 7 games, otherwise, he has either totaled at least 100 receiving yards or scored a touchdown or both in 6 of those 7 games. His one bad game was 3 catches for 44 yards, which, quite frankly, at this point, is not a game that absolutely kills you, given what you get from all these borderline wide receiver 3s that go out there. I don't really worry that much anymore about the game script or the opponent. I think you just throw him out there at this point.
It's a good point. Like, I pulled up his game log now, and if you take away the Hinton game, he actually has finished outside the top 35 wide receivers just once since week 2.
Yeah. He's legitimately, super consistent. I think he's a guy that, even now, I had him as my 3rd pickup this week. Not very close with the top 2, but I don't know. There's a good argument for him to be number 1 because I do think, and again, Yates, you mentioned it, 18.3% rostered.
Yeah.
That's what is happening right now? Legit. All right, Tim, can we come up with a new name for Tim Patrick? Yates, that's your
Can we come up with a new name for Dan Harris?
No, Dan Harris is boring and unexciting.
Dan Harris, CPA.
That's why. Yeah, Dan Harris, CPA. Come to me for all your accounting work. Tax season is upon us. Okay.
Oh man,
Tim Patrick, though, legitimately, I'm not kidding. They're at this point, given what he does, regardless of game script, doesn't matter if they're ahead or if they're behind. Really, regardless of opponent, he's a guy who you made the fantasy playoffs. You have any questions at wide receiver? Go ahead and pick him up. So. I like the call, Yates, and he's my 3rd right now. Again, the top 3 are very close. He might be number 1 though. Tags, is Patrick your number 1? You got another guy in mind?
No, he's not my number 1. He is number 3 for me as well. Mine's Kiki Qt. I really don't know how you don't have QT there. Just because you look at this Texans team and you're like, where are the targets going to go? You figure it out, and I had a few people ask me on the Sunday morning live show. in regards to like what should I do with QT, because I picked him up and I'm like, well, it's good that you picked him up, but I would prefer to wait and see what his role is before actually trusting him. And we know what happened. 8 catch, 141 yards against a tough Colts defense. Now going against the Bears, a team that's a defense, I should say, that's reeling right now. They're trending in the wrong direction, and QT is playing the majority of his snaps in the slot, and that's where Buster Screen's at. Buster Screen has allowed, I believe, the last I checked, it was more yards than any other cornerback in the NFL. In the slot, so he's been beat up in the slot. And knowing that Brandon Cooks, I wasn't on the show last night, but I have no idea how Brandon Cooks came back to that game. I think that I just don't know the definition of a concussion, because Brandon Cooks was knocked out. Like, he was legit, like, eyes rolled back and all that, and then he came back to the game. So as for a guy that has that type of concussion issues, I wouldn't be surprised to hear something come up this week about Brandon Cooks and that hit he took in that game. So if that's the case, QT all of a sudden it's just like, we already know he's getting a lot of targets, and it's just like, if we remove Brandon Cooks, like, where are these targets going? So QT is a guy that I would absolutely add. If you're needing a wide receiver, he's like a must add for me right now. Yeah,
he's my top guy as well. And again, I just think that it's not as if he's coming off like a super soft matchup or anything like that. Like, they've got to go somewhere. He's got to go somewhere with the ball, Deshaun Watson. Their defense is terrible. I mean, the Bears, not an explosive offense, of course, as you guys know, but they did just put up a ton of points against the Lions. Like, they'll put up some points. The Houston defense is terrible. They need to throw somewhere. And I guess Duke Johnson's going to get the 6 targets now going forward. But regardless, he's got to throw somewhere. So for me, QT had a great game. And again, everybody's kind of been like, oh, I'd like to see QT out there. I'd like to see, but he's been buried in the Bill O'Brien doghouse. And so for me, I agree. After this game, that's the reason why he's number one. I'll admit though, Yates, again, Tim Patrick kind of, they're not far off. But was QT your number 2 or your number 3, or you're advocating picking him up somewhere? Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's at 2 for me. So yeah, I definitely think that you can roster Kiki Qt, and especially too because Tags brought up the point of Matt going up against Buster Screen. This next week, I think that you can absolutely look at Kiki Qt as a flex play, and the same thing that Tags said, I was saying on the live stream, which I didn't listen to Tags, but anyway, was saying, I want to wait a week before I roll Kiki Qt into my starting lineups, because I just didn't know what we were going to see, and now we know, and I think that we got to continue to plug him into our lineups.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we approach it the same way, which is the way fantasy managers should have. You don't need to pick up somebody immediately, especially a wide receiver. It's always kind of been the philosophy of there is somebody out there who you can pick up and plug in and get away with on a week-to-week basis. You can do that at wide receiver. So play the longer game of somebody with higher upside is always the way I've done it. And QT is the guy. That's why you do it. I roster him in a couple of spots. I started him in 0 leagues this week. I'm not upset about it, because now at least I know I have this guy instead of racing to my waiver wire. Okay, so that's number 1. Tags. Was Patrick he was your number 3, so who's your number 2?
T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. has had his 2 best games of the year over the last 2 weeks, and granted, they were in good matchups against the Tennessee Titans and Houston Texans, but the rest of his schedule is good too. I mean, you look at the Raiders, that's an indoor game at Las Vegas. The Raiders do struggle on the perimeter. Then in week 15, he's playing Houston again. That's going to be in Houston, another game that's being played inside. Week 16 against the Steelers. The Steelers, they may not be the best matchup, but they're also not as bad as people think for wide receivers. That's actually the only position that you can consider playing someone against, because they do allow some production to wide receivers. I break that down in the primer every week. So he doesn't really have a bad matchup for the rest of the year, and he has plus matchups over the next 2 weeks. You do have to worry about Michael Pittman stealing some of that production, but, knowing that Jonathan Taylor, by the way, again, I wasn't on the recap show, so it's something I don't know if you guys talked about, but... And
you didn't listen to it, Tags? I mean, it wasn't the first thing you did this morning? There you go. Sorry,
no. But now you lost my train of thought. Jonathan Taylor did not... Some people are saying, after everybody left Jonathan Taylor for dead, he's so good again. I don't think he looked very good. Oh, no. I watched that game, and Jonathan Taylor, he hit the edge on one play, and I was like, oh, he's gone with this 4.3 speed that he has. He didn't. He got tackled by like a linebacker. Like he was plodding along. It doesn't look great for him. So they're not breaking long runs. Nyheim Hines doesn't have a run of more than 15 yards this season. So if they're not breaking off those long runs, even in plus matchups, which they've had against, again, Houston and Green Bay the other week that he had a decent game, I feel like they're going to continue to throw the ball. Phillip Rivers has been playing better than he has earlier in the season. Like over the second half of the year, he's been one of the better quarterbacks, honestly, in the NFL. The only concern here is that the Colts are now down to, it seems like their third string left tackle.
Yeah.
Which is not great.
No.
Not great at all.
It's not. They'll leave it to you to come on our waiver wire show and start insulting Jonathan Taylor. Man, come on. We talked like, if you had listened, Yates and I were like, yeah, we'll trust him at this point. We're good to go with him going forward.
I mean, I'll trust him as a David Montgomery type running back, yeah.
That's fine. I'll take that. Okay, so Yates, what do you think this is, by the way? What's the sudden sort of infatuation here? 191 yards, 2 touchdowns over the last 2 games with T.Y. Hilton. Do you think he wasn't healthy? Is Rivers just playing better? What's going on?
Yeah, well, I talked about it on the recap show, saying that like the matchup there this past week with Vernon Hargreaves in the slot, like that was a fantastic matchup for T.Y. Hilton. And so you could say like, yeah, we think he's going to produce in this one. I am still not ready to trust him over Michael Pittman Jr. From a talent perspective and just youth and everything. I still think that Pittman's got the edge there. So I'm more willing to bet on Pittman at this point. But, yeah, Phillip Rivers has been looking pretty good. And it's the matchups, man. It's this schedule here that you're looking at. If they were going up against Chicago, if they were going up against L.A., the Rams, these would be the matchups where I would be saying, don't go picking up T.Y. Hilton. But, yeah, at this point, I think you got to pick him up, and you can start him as a flex with upside.
This thing, Las Vegas, Houston, the next 2 weeks. I mean, we were talking about it in terms of the running backs, but you do whatever you want. Anybody on Indianapolis, just start him, get him out there. Yeah, so we're all in agreement, I think, on the top 3 then in some order. Tags, I think you and I have it exactly the same, which is QT, Hilton, and Patrick. Yates, you have Patrick, QT, Hilton?
Yes.
Is that your order? Okay, very good. Anybody else? I'll start with you, Yates. Is there any other wide receiver who's widely available who you are looking to pick up who you think can help?
It's a risky play, and this is only if you are absolutely desperate. And this is like the last tier of these guys that I'm saying, I think you can look their way. It's Colin Johnson, Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver. He's got a connection with Mike Glennon here, and you look at the Tennessee Titans matchup, which just saw Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, and Donovan Peoples-Jones go off against them. So I think that Colin Johnson, if you are absolutely desperate, you need a huge upside play. You're the 8 seed going up against the 1 seed or whatever in your playoffs. You know that you need a big performance to be able to advance. Then I think Colin Johnson as a low-end flex play with upside can be someone that you look at. But otherwise, this week I don't really think that there's anyone that I'm going to plant my flag on and say you got to go pick him up.
I am boycotting all Jaguars players until they put back Gardner Minshew as quarterback. Other than James Robinson, of course. Sure. Yes, we have to start him. Tags, anybody else you're looking at a wide receiver?
No, I don't really want Johnson. I don't know if Conley's going to come back to the lineup or whatever, but Chenault he's been kind of splitting snaps with Johnson, so he's down playing a full-time role. I think if you we talked about these guys last week, but Denzel Mims and Rashad Parriman, these guys against Seattle. Again, that negative game script is what you're chasing. Opponents have wide receivers alone have averaged 225.6 yards per game against the Seahawks. They've been getting better as of late, but the Giants also didn't throw the ball because, they were winning that game, which is really odd. So, I mean, if you think the Jets are going to win that game, then don't play Denzel Mims or Rashad Parriman. But if you think that they're going to lose that game big like I do, then Denzel Mims and Parriman become somewhat interesting. I'm not excited to play them. I would rather play Patrick or Hilton or QT.
I'll add that if you do think that the Jets are going to win that game, then you should not be playing fantasy football because or driving because your judgment is impaired. What about Henry Ruggs, guys? I mean, obviously he had the giant catch at the end of the game, which wouldn't have happened against probably any other defense there, but he gets the touchdown and 46 yards. He's got a couple of decent games. He played the most snaps of any Raiders wide receiver. Still too risky here going forward, but I mean, a long-term, if he has a big game here against Indianapolis, I mean, maybe he could be something, or completely no interest. I'll go to you first, Tags.
Well, I mean, he plays the Colts, who have allowed the 10th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. He plays the Chargers, who have allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. And then he plays against the Dolphins, the team that has allowed they're 17th because they've seen a whole lot of volume. But on an efficiency basis, you don't want to play wide receivers against Miami. So, I mean, I really still don't want to play Henry Ruggs. If you were to take away that long touchdown that he caught at the end of the game, that Hail Mary that should have never happened, he busts.
Yeah, I mean, 2 catches for whatever it would be, right? 38 yards, as everybody did except for Darren Waller. Yates, you agree? No upside there really for the rest of this season anyway.
Yeah, for the rest of this season. I like him long term. I think that he's someone that you should go target in dynasty leagues, but as of right now, I do not want to invest in Henry Ruggs for 2020.
Okay, let's go to quarterback. I'll go back to you and start with you, Tags. Is there any widely available quarterback that you are looking to pick up this week?
I mean, it just depends on the percentages you go by, but on our list that we have in front of us, I guess it'd be Trubisky that I would consider. Houston, they've been a stomping ground for running backs, but let's not pretend that David Montgomery's going to rush for 2 touchdowns every game. In fact, David Montgomery coming into last week's game had 2 rushing touchdowns in his previous 20 games. So... So if they're going to score points against the Texans, if they're projected for, I haven't seen the line in this game yet, but if they're projected for 25, 26 points, that's 3 to 4 touchdowns. It's like Mitch Trubisky has been able to post solid fantasy numbers. Again, this is another game that it's another team that I should say. The Texans have struggled with quarterbacks. They've struggled with running backs. They struggle everywhere. But losing Bradley Roby in the secondary, it was no coincidence that we saw Phillip Rivers kind of dice them up last week. It's no coincidence that we saw T.Y. Hilton have his best game of the year without Bradley Roby back there. They just don't have cornerback depth. So losing Bradley Roby was huge for them. I think Trubisky can be considered as a streamer.
Is Trubisky your quarterback to the extent you're picking somebody up?
Yep. Yeah, he's number 1 for me. And it's mostly to do, like, the Bears had 3 rushing touchdowns last against Detroit. And it was, Montgomery with 2 of them, Cordell Patterson with 1 of them. And we just can't. I mean, this offense actually was able to move the ball and put up points, like you said, Dan. So if that's the case here against Houston, which should happen, I doubt that we're going to see 3 rushing touchdowns again. We could see those touchdowns go the other way, which could go to Trubisky, and he does bring some rushing upside too. So I think that from a streaming quarterback perspective, if you're looking at it, I talked about Trubisky a couple weeks ago, saying that he's someone that you can look at in the fantasy football playoffs because the matchups here, Houston, Minnesota, Jacksonville, these are matchups that I want Trubisky in, and he'll probably end up like QB 15, QB 16 in my rankings this week.
Yeah, and he didn't have a huge fantasy day or anything like that, but fumble aside, he played pretty well. The offense moved, as we talked about.
And that fumble, too, that's really not on Trubisky. That was just a great play by Okora coming off the edge. It was just a fantastic play.
No, I mean, I meant from, the fantasy perspective, essentially, right? Yeah, so, again, he was somebody who, I think we all thought of as a potential streamer, and it didn't really work. He didn't, crush you or anything like that. It didn't really work out. But, again, that's because of the 3 rushing touchdowns. So, against Houston, you can always pretty much play everybody. Let's go to tight ends then, guys, because I agree, really, there's nobody else at quarterback that I'm even really thinking about. How about tight ends here, Yates? Anybody who's widely available who you're looking at for, next week, or, if you want to say longer term, go ahead, but anybody who you're looking at the position? Yeah,
there's actually some really intriguing names here that kind of fall into the streaming tight end conversation. Cole Kmet is one that I'll talk about here. Again, going back to the Bears offense, super involved. Jimmy Graham, 1 target this past week. Cole Kmet I need to see the routes run, statistics from this past week, but Cole Kmet was out there. He was heavily targeted, 7 targets. Was able to find the end zone. He's someone that is now entering into that conversation if Jimmy Graham is indeed riding the bench, which we could have said probably was the smart plan all season long. And then after that, Anthony Ferkser. With Jonnu Smith sidelined, if that is the case for this next week up against Jacksonville, you start your opposing tight ends up against Jacksonville. So Ferkser is bringing a safe floor. But there's some intriguing names. Dalton Schultz, Drew Sample, Jordan Reed. There's some really intriguing names here.
Yeah, you mentioned Sample last night. Yeah, Kmet he's on the field way more at this point than Jimmy Graham, which is good to see. And, of course, the matchup. How about you, Tags? Who's your number 1 at tight end?
Oh, real quick, the routes run were 20 to 16 for Kmet. So he played a little bit more than Graham in terms of the pass game role. They're transitioning him to that role. I'd prefer a guy that was playing more of a full-time role, I think. But Ferkser is definitely something to watch. If Jonnu Smith misses this game, I sent Yates a graphic earlier. I said, you want to see something gross? And he's like, no. I sent it anyway. But if you put Jonnu Smith and Anthony Ferkser next to each other this year, Ferkser has just 2 fewer targets. He has 4 more receptions, just 5 fewer yards, but 6 fewer touchdowns. So the touchdowns has been where it's at. But fortunately, Jacksonville is a team that has allowed 8.51 yards per target, which is the 3rd highest number in the NFL. and they've allowed a touchdown every 7.9 targets to tight ends, which is the most in the NFL. So I do think Ferkser would be a great one. You mentioned Dalton Schultz. I think he's a good play. Jordan Reed is one I would also throw in here because we haven't seen Reed play this week yet.
And revenge game, right?
It is the revenge game. We also have the Andy Dalton revenge game, by the way.
Yep.
Right. By the way, I was 3 seconds away from mentioning Dalton as hey, what do you think? Add Dalton as the revenge game. Again, we have not seen that Dallas game whatsoever. But yeah, Tags Reed is a guy who, if he comes out of this game tonight healthy, he's gotten, assuming that he's still going to get all these targets, like he's somebody who you might be willing to roll with, right?
For sure. It's a good matchup against Washington. So it's something to pay attention to, provided they use him like I think they would. So yeah, I do think that Jordan Reed would. I mean, not knowing Ferkser in terms of his status, Jonnu Smith's status, if we hear Jonnu Smith is out, I would say Ferkser is probably my number one. But as of right now, I'll go with Jordan Reed, who has seen 6 targets in all but one game when George Kittle was out. So that's targets you can't just pass on. And we should give an honorable mention to Jordan Akins.
Yes.
Because even though he did not do well last week, that was the Colts. The Colts are legitimately like one of the toughest teams in the NFL with tight ends. The Bears are honestly the worst. They've actually they've allowed the third most fantasy points per game to tight ends now, 16.2 PPR points. Again, I've talked about Brandon Cooks dealing with whatever is going on if there's some lingering effects from that hit. So the Bears, that's second. All of a sudden, that defense the Bears are fielding does not look so scary to people. And David Johnson's not going to break the game open. So Deshaun Watson's throwing for 300 yards like every single week. So you kind of want to find where they're going to go. And I think Akins has a good shot at that.
Yeah, Hawkinson was in the circle of trust anyway, but people ask about it as sort of like, well, pass catchers going up against the Bears seemed scary to them, but tight ends, it's not the same as wide receivers when they're going up against tight ends. I completely agree with you. Schultz is the guy, for me, the guy who I would prioritize, again, without knowing Jonnu Smith's status at this point. Again, we have not seen this game again this week. But again, at least 5 targets and 4 catches in 5 of his last 6 games. And again, going up against the Bengals, not a strong team against tight ends, of course. So he would be the guy if I think we had to prioritize somebody. And again, Yates, you did mention Drew Sample. You mentioned him briefly now, and you talked about him last night. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got 12 targets and 89 yards in 2 games at tight end. That's good at tight end, right? I mean, where we are right now. Now, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be coming into this game, right? Because Brandon Allen got hurt last night. But either way, yeah, honorable mention to Drew Sample.
Yep.
Okay, top overall 5 waiver wire pickups. Start with you, Yates. Who's your top 5?
Yeah, top 5. I am going to go with the guy who loads up as soon as it comes. Tim Patrick at number 1, and then Kiki Qt at 2, T.Y. Hilton at 3, Ty Johnson at 4, but that's only if Frank Gore is indeed out, and then Adrian Peterson as a placeholder right now at 5. Again, gross waiver wire week.
Yeah, not the best. How about you, Tags?
All right, I have it Kiki Qt at 1, T.Y. Hilton at 2, Tony Pollard at 3, which, again, it depends on your roster. If you need a wide receiver, obviously Patrick can go in there at number 3, but Tony Pollard's there, and then number 5, I have Jordan Reed.
Okay. I've got Kiki Qt 1, T.Y. Hilton 2, Tim Patrick 3, Adrian Peterson 4, and Dalton Schultz 5, because I do think that if you are, desperate for a tight end here, I think he is somebody who you can roll with starting next week. Top QB and DST streamers, we already talked about quarterback, and that's really Trubisky of the widely available guys, right?
Yeah, but there's a few guys so I write an article that comes out on Saturday mornings it's called Weekend Waiver Wire Stashes. I look ahead to the following week, and both Kirk Cousins and Phillip Rivers were less than 40% owned when I wrote that article. I don't know if Cousins went up since then, but Cousins at Tampa Bay, don't be scared of Tampa Bay. That team they're kind of like the Bears in that way, where all of a sudden that secondary started to fall apart a little bit. They faced a lot of pass attempts. You cannot run the ball against them. And Kirk Cousins, if you were to remove, this is a fun stat, if you were to remove all rushing totals from quarterbacks and just go up basically off what their passes, in terms of fantasy points pure pass attempt, Aaron Rodgers is number 1 by far and away. Like honestly, I think he's like 10% better than anybody else. Patrick Mahomes is number 2. Number 3 is Kirk Cousins.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good stat, Tags.
I thought so.
Way to be. I like it. What about if Phillip Rivers is still out there? Because, I was checking, at least in Yahoo leagues, he's something like 50% out there against Vegas. I mean, he kind of has established himself as a guy who, in a plus matchup, like the Colts are filled with going forward. And for mine, he's somebody you can kind of start. Do you agree with that, Tags?
I'd prefer Cousins, but Rivers is the backup plan, actually, because Rivers was the other guy in that article, and then I put desperation options as Trubisky and Andy Dalton. So Cousins is my top pick, though.
Yates, how you feeling about all of that? Disagree with anything? Preferences? What do you got?
No, I really don't have much to add there.
That's fantastic. Not the best in the business for nothing, folks. Let's go to the DSTs. I'll start with you, Yates, since you can lead the way on this one, since we stole all the thunder on the quarterbacks. Who's the DST that's widely available that you're looking to pick up?
Washington. Washington going up against a team that I can't remember off the top of my head.
San Francisco.
Thank you. So going up against San Francisco, Nick Mullins at quarterback. Again, we have to see what they look like here tonight, but or tomorrow night, whatever freaking day it is.
This is tonight, actually. Don't worry, you're good.
So they're going to be able to create pressure. And Nick Mullins, the concern here is that, okay, did they get the ball, again, like 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage to Deebo Samuel? But again, Washington's been a pretty stout defense here and really stingy against opposing wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting, and I think that they're going to be able to at least force 1 or 2 turnovers. So, again, you're looking at a lot of fantasy managers heading into the playoffs have already stored up these opposing defenses here. So the waiver wire is pretty slim pickings here, and I think Washington's probably the best of the bunch. So they're someone who will probably rank just inside my top 12 for next week.
How about you, Tags? What do you got?
I have the team on the other side of the ball, actually, the 49ers. I was surprised to see them available. They were just 38% owned when I did this on Saturday. They're clearly not the defense they were last year, which is fine, but they've started to turn a corner, and Washington has allowed their quarterback to be sacked 3.2 times per game and at least twice in every single game. They've also turned the ball over 8 times in their last 4 games. So if the 49ers can slow down the run game, they have all year, that means Alex Smith is going to actually have to drop back and pass in another revenge game, which leads to more upside for your DST. I do like the Washington pick. I think I would actually prefer Washington, but San Francisco's another one like on the other side of the ball that I'd contemplate.
Yeah, I'll throw out a couple more, and those are good picks. I'll throw out Tennessee against Jacksonville. Tennessee pretty widely available. Their defense is not good, but
they're terrible.
I know, but
so
you're going
bad.
up against Mike Glennon. I don't care.
Yeah,
I am much more willing to play against the terrible. Yeah, and again, Glennon has already been named the starter. And I'll throw out Dallas against Cincy just because I do think that, Cincinnati allows a ton of sacks regardless, but also might be Ryan Finley under center, in which case the 3 of us could play defense and probably score a decent one for a DST. All right, guys, drop or keep. Are you ready for the fringe-worthy guys? I will start with Tags today. Let's go drop or keep Todd Gurley.
Keep.
Yates.
I keep him because I don't think you need to pick up anyone else.
Okay, I'll drop. I mean, if you're telling me like this is a guy who I don't know when I'm gonna.
You drop him for Adrian Peterson?
I don't really care. That's the patented Harris shrug. Like, okay, Tags. Wow. You're not starting Todd Gurley this week against Chargers, right?
Against the Chargers? I don't think you should run from this game actually.
Oh, it's not the matchup. It's the fact that it's Todd Gurley who basically is playing the fewest.
This average 2 yards per carry.
I'd probably play him this week. I would not play him next week against Tampa Bay.
You're not going to. That's what I'm saying. If you're willing to play him next week, fine. Oh, if you're willing to play him this week, I'm sorry, fine. The Chargers are not a matchup that you fear. I completely agree. It's more of the fact that he barely played in this game. He had the fewest snaps, I think, of any of the running backs. All 3 of them were involved. And Todd Gurley looks like he's running in mud. So he might have the goal line work. But for me, I don't know, man. We're in the fantasy playoffs, dude. Like, I don't think I'm risking Todd Gurley out there at this point, and you're not doing it next week. So official Harris advice, don't even worry about the shrug. Drop him for whoever you want. I'm fine with it. Yates, drop or keep DJ Chark.
Keep him.
Tags.
Keep.
Okay, I'll drop again.
They're playing the Titans this week. You got to keep him. If you're not going to play him this week, I guess you can cut him. But I think this is 1 week. This is probably the last time I'll trust him.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess I will specify when I say drop somebody, I feel comfortable dropping them if I have to. But sometimes those guys are going to rank as like, oh, well, maybe like Jameson Crowder, who I think I was like, hey, you know what, I feel okay dropping him. But I still ranked him, as I talked about in the start to the show, as somebody who could start. Don't spite drop. Like, I'm not spite dropping Todd Gurley. Would I drop him for Adrian Peterson? I don't know. I don't really care about that. But DJ Chark at this point, I don't know, man. I just don't. With Mike Glennon back there, I don't think I'm going to feel comfortable starting him. So when I'm not going to feel comfortable starting you in week 14 of the fantasy football season, then you're a drop. And DJ Chark right now at this point is a drop, as is the next guy for me. Back to you, Tags. Hayden Hurst.
I'll keep.
Yates.
Keep him based on the other options at the tight end position.
Fantastic. I'm dropping him like he's hot. Like I've dropped.
Jesus, you're dropping every.
Dan's not going to have anyone left on his roster.
Yes, not everybody has 3 top 12 running backs, Dan.
Okay, we have talked about some interesting tight ends. Okay, Hayden Hurst is a tight end, just to be clear. We have talked about top tight ends, guys who are available at this time. Are you telling me that you're going to be like, oh man, I've got to start Hayden Hurst with Julio Jones healthy? It's a different story if Julio Jones is out. With Julio Jones healthy, are you telling me you're like, man, I got to start Hayden Hurst?
Yes, he's better with Julio Jones in the lineup. And this week's matchup against the Saints was terrible. It's like legit one of the worst matchups in the NFL. I had Hurst outside my top 12 this week. I'm not going to drop him though.
All right. I'm more than willing to drop him at this point. It is week 14, guys. I'm dropping everybody. Everybody, go pick up Adrian Peterson. That's my advice.
Don't drop Hayden Hurst.
All right, fine. Don't listen to them. Do whatever you guys want. That's why there's 3 of us, so the 2 of them can gang up on me. I don't care. It's my show. I'm hosting. Yates, back to you. Jerry Jeudy, drop or keep?
Oh, man. At this point, drop him.
Tags?
Yeah, I'm willing to drop. I mean, especially for someone like Kiki Qt.
Thank you. Finally, that is the correct answer. You're right. Tags, you keep all your borderline guys on your fantasy playoffs. I'm just dropping everybody. How about Matt Ryan? Tags, drop or keep?
Geez, this one, you could drop him. I mean, I'd rather stream quarterbacks than play him, I think. He'll have streamability next week against Tampa, but not this week against the Chargers.
How about you, Yates?
Yeah, he's a streaming quarterback at this point. I don't feel like you can continue to rely on him. I'll play, some of these other options above him. Drop him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think, would I play Matt Ryan? Is there a chance that Matt Ryan's going to be my best option in any given week? There's a chance, absolutely. But it's still at a point where I can stream the quarterback position and there's not going to be a huge difference in my projections between him and the available guys that we've talked about. Back to you, Yates. Drop or keep Christian Kirk?
Drop him at this point. You can't trust him.
Tags.
Yeah, I'm okay to drop him if you want to.
All right, we're all on the same page. I think I'm just dropping everybody apparently. Tags, drop or keep James White?
You could drop him.
Yates.
Drop him.
I agree. Let's get tougher here, okay? I thought we were whatever, but let's get tougher. Yates, drop or keep Michael Pittman Jr.?
Keep him.
Tags.
I mean, the matchups we talked about with Hilton, they're good matchups. I guess I'd keep him.
Yeah, the matchups are too good for me, and so I do want to keep him. But, I will say this. If you're in an absolute bind, and there are some people who are in an absolute bind, if you dropped him, I wouldn't be like, that's the craziest decision I've ever heard. I would personally keep him, but I agree with you. Tags, drop or keep David Johnson?
Keep.
Yates?
Keep him.
Yeah, I'm also keeping him. But again, this is going to be something where I'm never going to be. If my opponent is starting David Johnson, I'm always going to feel fine about it, right? Especially with the matchups that are upcoming. So he goes there. I'm going to save this one for Tag. Sorry, Yates. I got to give him a double up because it is his guy that he has talked about a lot and been pretty on the ball on. Last one, Tags. Mm-hmm. Drop or keep Kareem Hunt?
You'll keep him. He's one of those guys that if you put on the waiver wire and Chubb gets hurt, like he's that guy. No, you don't drop him.
Yates?
Yeah, I'll agree. You keep him. I don't know. I mean, we've seen Chubb get injured and Hunt really hasn't done much, but yeah, he's still someone that you can roll out as a solid RB2 in that instance. He's a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 right now, but you still got to keep him.
Yeah. So the weird thing also that I was getting at with a lot of these guys, and this is, you can see I'm much more willing to cut bait with at this point. We are down to the playoffs in nearly every league. And so you have fewer teams who are available, and probably the teams that are out there are pretty strong. So when you have the middling guys, like for me, like Todd Gurley, who I'm never going to start. Like, I guess there's a situation where I could be forced into starting him, but if you're in a normal 12-team league, like I'm probably not starting him. I'm just willing to get rid of at this point. I'm done holding guys who I think these guys are probably too good to be dropped, or maybe something could crazy go right. Kareem Hunt falls above that line. I agree. Kareem Hunt is a guy who I think you still hold, if for no other reason than the very high-end handcuff value. But that's sort of where my philosophy is. That's my rant. I am done. Tags, I appreciate you fighting through the sickness, and you brought energy. It dipped a little bit at around the 20-minute mark of this podcast, but you brought it back up, so I appreciate it, my man.
Yeah, no, I think you may have said something that just made me mad, so it brought it back. But
I got it.
Can I share a fun note, though, that because I wasn't on the show last night and I came across this?
Sure.
So I wrote last week in the primer these exact words. I said, so I was talking about Damian Harris. I said, let's pretend that number that he gets this week is 16 carries, just for this exercise. He's failed to receive a target in 4 of his last 5 games, so we can't count on that. Even if Harris gets 16 carries and averages a rock star like 5.0 yards per carry, he ends the game with 80 yards. If he doesn't score, he's not getting into startable territory, especially in PPR formats. Do you know what he finished with exactly in week 13?
I do, but I will let you say it.
16 carries for 80 yards. Like, I was just proud of that. So
but he got a target.
He caught a pass.
He caught a pass for
totally
15 yards.
Screwed me.
Why if you're not going to be able to predict that one, Tags, why am I even listening to you at this point? No, that's cool, man. That's why you're the third best in the business behind the two of us. So way to go.
Sweet.
I really appreciate it. All right, that's it for our waiver wire show, guys. Again, stick with it. It's okay. Maybe Kiki Qt will carry you to your championship. Give Tim Patrick a cooler name and pick him up. It'll all be good. Don't forget to check out our waiver wire assistant over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook for help with your pickups. Yates is going to be back tomorrow with an episode. I get the day off. Best day of my life. But I will talk to you on Wednesday with Tags on our Start Sit show.
Thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.